Welcome to Religion Zero, number 36. Oh, thank you.
Good job, Con. Good job.
Mhm. All right. So today we are talking about drugs, and there were so many good puns I could have titled this episode that I couldn't pick a favorite, so I just went to the basic one of drugs and religion. But I mean, we had pray, pray, pass. We had getting high on the Lord, or Jesus the Most High. I had a couple more, but I was like, I don't know. I like them all. I'm just going to go basic for this one. Make sure everyone knows specifically what we're talking about. But before we start and get into that, Amos, our third guy, should be here soon. But until then, Brooke, what's been going on in your world?
I have some good news, Conk. Very, very good news. For the first time since I've been in Wales, we have snow as of today.
Look at that.
We got fucking snow. How great is that?
Hallelujah.
Yeah. I mean, we had the 5 minutes of snow the last time, but this time it's really come down. There's a nice covering. It's all reflective. That's why this place is so bright, because the windows, all the lights just bouncing into my apartment on the first floor. So that's very good. Secondly, not so good news. I fucked up with my shaving of my beard. And as a result, I've had to correct it by going with a goatee. So,
oh, look at that.
Yeah. I was in the shower and I had it set to the thing, just to kind of give it a trim, and it snapped into a different setting. And I zogged half of my beard. So it's kind of like, oh, for fuck's sake. So
you should have seen if you could have gone with the Charles Dickens mutton chops.
I would have done that, but it went like all the way down to my neck. So it was not salvageable at that point. Like, oh, okay.
It's rough.
Yeah, I mean, but I used to wear a goatee when I was younger and stuff like that, so I feels quite at home. Once the sides grow back in, I'll trim it all the way down and just grow it out again. But let me know, guys. What do you think? Do you like the look? Do you like the goatee? Am I too hairless now? I don't know. And just very quickly on the topic, I like how you phrased it as drugs and religion. Mm-hmm. Because it actually opens up the conversation to discuss what happens in faiths, right? Which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, there's a very diverse palette of drug topics.
Of material to pull from. Yeah, definitely, definitely. What's going on with you, my friend? How has your week been? Everything looks all right? Everything going good?
Yeah, I've had 2 guests so far for the Airbnb. Made money off those. And I have a third one upstairs right now for the Chiefs playoffs game. So it's pretty sick, pretty hype. Yeah, Kansas City's going crazy this week. So
that's your mortgage payment taken care of then.
Close. it's about 700 and change out of 1,200. So
that's so fine.
Yeah, look at that. $1,200 payment down to 400. I can deal with that. So,
well, to much more continued success for you and the Airbnb business. I really hope it works out for you.
Yeah, I did actually get to see one of my old friends from my really private, snobby Christian high school this weekend.
Oh, spicy! How did that go?
And, he's really cool. He's one of the good ones, of my inner circle of people I actually hung out with at that school. But it was a tiny ass school. We had 27 people in my graduating class. So my entire grade was 27 people, and we all always had the same classes, and so you just lived your lives with these 20 people for 4 years. It was pretty cool. He was one of them. And we haven't seen each other since 2009. It's pretty nuts. Cool. So we had a lot of catching up to do. We went to a place called Hula Hands, which is like Applebee's but fancy. And Applebee's is like the generic chain restaurant that divorced dads take their kids. So it was that style, but it's actual good food. And we talked for about 3 hours. It was pretty cool, just catching up on life and all that stuff. He actually makes comic books for a living at the moment. He's an artist,
like his own stuff. Good.
I think so. Yeah. And then he also, I think he does that and an auto parts store to pay the bills as well, a little extra, but you do what you can. But yeah, we talked about life, talked about all that good stuff. So it was cool seeing, someone I haven't seen for almost 12 years.
That's really
being
cool.
able to catch up and see. And I'm glad I didn't get that far off the deep end, because at least we related on most of the stuff we talked about still,
How far off the deep end has he gone? Could you give us a little insight into that?
Oh no, I was afraid I was going off the deep end, and I'm glad I found another human being I can relate to when I talk about.
So he's kind of in the same place as you then.
Well, yeah. Well, at least he understood my rantings and ramblings. So, I mean, that means there's some tether to truth somewhere in there. It might be a fine line, but it's there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad
So
you
that
had a
was
good
pretty
time.
cool. Yep. And he stayed there in Airbnb for a night. So that was awesome. He actually stayed last night and crashed. And then we went to lunch and then they headed out. So,
Cool.
yeah, it was pretty cool. Pretty cool week so far. Work sucks, but that's about it. But that's normal. So the paperwork just keeps immensing. I actually purposefully didn't check my email for 1 week just to see what would happen, and nothing happened. So I might have to do
The
that more
world
often.
didn't end.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
I mean, at least it still got work, which is a lot better than a lot of people. So that's still a plus.
Yeah, that is a plus. However, the COVID relief for unemployment here is $100 more a month than I would have made.
You kind of wish
So I could have got a little bit more if I did nothing.
Good on you, man.
All right. Well, on to the topic of drugs and religion.
Let's get cracking.
So do we want to break it open of what do we mean by drugs, first of all? Because I think that's an interesting topic in itself. What are we meaning by drugs in this context?
Well, you set the topic, man. You start us off in that direction.
Hey, I didn't know what I wanted. I don't know. These two words look good. No, because to me, drugs is literally practically anything, right? The stereotypical one is, like coke, heroin, alcohol, things like that. But I mean, caffeine, nicotine, sugar, all have the same dependence. Actually, cheese has some research in it that it's very similar to your brain to opiates.
Yes.
So if we are to be sober minded, does that mean we're not supposed to have cheese anymore? Right. And that's a fun argument we could probably break into in a minute. But I think it's interesting to talk about when we talk about drugs. I guess the definition I'd go with is something that actually does alter your body or mind on purpose. Right. And I think it can really come from anywhere instead of, the stereotypical, cracked out homeless guy on the street is what you think. But I mean, the 40-year-old Karen that just is addicted to coffee and bagels when she's at church, are they not in the same boat? Possibly.
Yeah. It's a good question.
Yeah. So what about you? How would you describe drugs, like from your perspective?
I would agree with you. I would basically put it down to this. Look, so I'm on the carnivore diet. So animals are food, plants are medicine. That's kind of my thing. We can tolerate a certain amount of plants, but plants aren't exactly our friends, right? There are things in plants that are purposely designed to kill us, right? They're anti-nutrients. They're because they're not symbiotic with animals. Animals are trying to kill them, right? It's trying to eat them. So plants come up with amazing compounds to defend themselves from being eaten. I mean, if you go out and you take sap from a tree, you could be hospitalized. There's some certain grasses you eat, and that's going to land you in hospital. So plants are not our friend, but they are an amazing concoction of these compounds that are defensive. And in certain doses, I do think they're beneficial to us. So I would agree with your definition. Things like caffeine. Caffeine is considered a drug, as well as, marijuana, which happens to be a weed. It's like it is grass, right? Then you got the fungus, right? So of course, mushrooms and these other things. Some mushrooms, portobello mushrooms, are fantastic. Then you get to things like the Amanita muscaria. That's going to send you on a psychedelic trip, right? But it's the same category of technically food. So I would take the definition that you would say. I don't think you can take a medication that does not alter your biology and your mentality to some degree. This has been found even taking aspirin, something as benign as aspirin, it ends up in the brain. It actually, it doesn't do major damage, but it does alter brain chemistry and stuff like that. So I don't think we could fully get away from some kind of mental aspect to taking these substances. But I mean, we'll discuss quantities, effects, and all these. Having your cup of coffee in the morning, which stimulates the pituitary gland that releases.
Got me some black tea right here.
And there you go, right? The caffeine, it's affecting your brain, right? It's sending a signal. It pushes some adrenaline and some stress hormones, and it gives you a wake up kind of a drug, but it's poisonous. It's actually your body is responding to the poison that is in the plants and these other things, and it puts this adrenaline into the body to fight it. So whether that's the best way to do it or not, of course, is the question. But I love coffee, right?
Yeah. I mean, even by that logic with caffeine, then wouldn't spicy food with capsaicin also be part of that?
Yeah, turmeric, all of these, all of the spicy habanero, what do you call them? Jalapenos and stuff. Those substances that gives us that spice is actually the defense mechanism of the plant, right? That is what keeps small animals and other things from consuming the plant and so forth, and allows it to grow to maturity. We humans take it as this is gourmet shit, man. This is
glutton for punishment, literally at this point. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, so I agree with you that it is a broader topic. Oh my, look who's decided to join us, man. Good morning, good sir. How are you doing?
Good.
Yeah,
I apologize to you guys as well as the listeners that I'm a little late.
Only a smidge. Only a quarter of the show. No, not really.
But I mean, we could ask Amos the question now, his definition on drugs and these different things.
Drugs?
Yes.
Yeah. How would you define drugs as a whole category?
Substances that have a physiological effect.
Yeah. I think that's probably right in line with what we were talking about. Yeah.
Took him all of 10 seconds, man.
And we'll see everyone next week. No.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So should we start with like the benign stuff and get to the more interesting stuff? I don't know how you want to progress, Carl.
I did want to point out this Red Crusader. He needs drugs to get through Sunday morning masses. If you need drugs to get through your church service, you might be in the wrong church, bud.
We need drugs sometimes to get through the show. So I don't know.
Well, I never expected this show to be quality. This is my favorite form of it's educational shit posting is how I would classify it. That's the new quality. But what were you saying? Sorry, I missed that. I got too lost making fun of Red.
Yeah, Amos. What? So just expect, because we were just saying that we think, as you say, anything that causes a physiological change. So it doesn't have to be necessarily crack cocaine or heroin or opium. It could be something as benign as
DMT.
Which your body produces naturally, but we were saying sugar, caffeine, aspirin, all of these things are technically drugs.
Ibuprofen.
Yeah, ibuprofen,
Certain pain relievers, acetaminophen. What about them? The thing about drugs is we do take certain ones to just, in our minds, to function, not even to necessarily have some sort of massive altering effect. Like some people go into work, pop an ibuprofen because it's such a headache to them. People like Red, drink coffee to make it through church service. Some people will take
heroin to not feel the feels. Right?
No, I'm trying to think in the milder side of things. People will take
sugar for stress relief.
Yeah, there's definitely sugar for stress release.
They have Sweet Ease where they dip pacifiers and sugar to babies, and it helps them with surgery.
Yeah.
It's a thing called Sweeties.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But excuse me. So I don't know exactly. I mean, I didn't listen to the entire last 10 minutes that I wasn't here, but
well, maybe we could get into some of the
alcohol.
Yes.
Sorry, I just saw the what you posted. Alcohol would just be it's just a good social lubricant.
So maybe that's where we start, because I know alcohol is the big controversy in some parts of the church.
No.
If you drink, you don't drink.
I thought
where
all Christians are totally okay with drinking in
No, no.
moderation.
Yeah.
I actually have a T-shirt from when I was in Texas where I said I drank a beer in the Bible Belt and survived. Cataplau. And cataplau was like my word back in the day when we were doing ministry. But yeah, that's a real thing.
I actually got quartered once. I was doing it was like a youth mentoring program when I was in college for like middle and high schoolers. And one of the chaperones, so this was in Colorado, but all the surrounding states, like Wyoming and Utah and New Mexico and all them would all come there as well. So we'd have surrounding areas, all part of the big program. And I got surrounded by a guy in New Mexico, and he kind of cornered me because I was one of the guys helping run it. And he was just chaperoning some of his kids there. And he's like, so what do you feel about the Lord's drink? Or how do you feel about the devil's drink, the devil juice? What's your stance on that? And I was like, well, I know he's talking about alcohol, but I just tried to play dumb. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean? See if I can get him to explain himself and how dumb he sounds. But yeah, that's a pretty prevalent thing, especially with the hardcore trad cons is like no sip of alcohol is okay. You're just asking yourself to be infested with demons and do sinful things. Yeah.
I mean, isn't that the case with the Mormons as well? They don't even drink coffee for some of them.
Yeah, brewed drinks is on the no list. Yeah. So anything Coca-Cola, tea, coffee, anything like that. Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, have you had alcohol? Is it?
Oh no, we have to admit if we've had alcohol on the show.
We do our drinking stories. 99.
Our history of drug use. I've personally only been drunk twice in my life. Once on accident, once on purpose. For science. Once was on accident. The accident when I was in an airport, and I had a 1 p.m. flight, and I got there really early. And so I was like, okay, well, the bar is open 24/7. So I went and I got a really thick IPA, that it was a very dank hoppy. And I realized I didn't eat anything that day. So I drank 2 of those, and I stood up and I go, this isn't balance. And so I slowly walked my way over to the sandwich shop to eat a sandwich so that I could make it to the rest of my gate and not walking like this. And then the one on purpose actually did. I had a cranberry and vodka that the night before with some friends playing cards and stuff. And then the next morning they left it all there. And so I was like, well, I have an empty stomach. I'm going to chug this and I'm going to literally write down everything I can remember. And I did that. And then I ate some food and then I was normal. So, but those are literally the only 2 times in my life I would ever consider myself drunk. I've never really cared for alcohol. It was just kind of weird. I personally haven't drank in about 2.5 years, not because I think it's evil, but because I remember at one point I realized, I haven't had alcohol in 4 months. Let's keep this going. Let's see how long I can go. And that was about 2 years ago. So good fun. So I don't know about your guys' drinking stories. I'm sure yours are probably way more verbose than mine, but
Amos, you got a drinking story, man?
I was actually gonna get more. I wanted to mention quick, my, I guess you could say in the religious context, in the Christian context, my red pilling towards alcohol. And when I was down in Texas, I've kind of told some of you, and I was in ministry. And so I wasn't 21 yet, but I was with a group of guys. We went out to get something to eat, and one of them ordered a beer. And we were all kind of we've had discussions about it, but never really did anything. So the guy ordered a beer, and we were at a taco place. And one of the other guys, my friend Omar, as Brooke knows about, looked at me and he goes, "Oh man, gotta be careful about ordering that beer. Amos is tripping over here," because it was so against the sort of common theological perspective and all that. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, and it was actually when I saw that and I'm drinking, and it did feel weird at the time, seeing a Christian drinking and willingly partaking, and I'm like, okay, what's going on here? So then, I mean, obviously nothing happened. I just, had tacos with a beer. You just do that. So, then fast forward a little bit later, it's about a month leading up to my 21st birthday,
Mhm.
and I'm driving to work, and like kind of back when I kind of would have the more of this happening, I kind of said to myself like, what's the real big deal with alcohol? Like, I've read through this, I understand that, like, obviously Jesus didn't drink just grape juice, as Heather here was posting in the chat here. um and it's funny, yeah, she said Methodist because that's the big Methodist position, which is Jesus drank grape juice,
Yeah.
and the Methodists invented grape juice. um excuse me. So
It's invented by big Methodists to sell more grape juice.
yeah, what's his name, the guy who founded Methodism?
Leslie.
Leslie. Yeah, I went to
Yeah.
Leslie in college, but they didn't want alcohol on the premises, but they didn't care what you did when you left town. So
Welch's was from, I think.
Yeah, he was a Methodist preacher, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. So anyway, so I have this conversation where I'm kind of thinking to myself, but in a way thinking to God, like, what's the big deal if I did drink just to try? And then I go home and I tell my parents, and then they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. I mean, what's the worst that could really happen if I just give it a go? 2 weeks before my birthday, my mom offered me a glass of wine. I didn't really know what to think of it. It was just like, oh, it's like this red wine. It was a little bitter and stuff. And then my birthday comes around, and I had a 6-pack of beer.
All of it?
No. So like my uncle brought over. It was he called it a variety pack, but it was only just like he took like a case, like those cardboard cases for like 6 packs of beer bottles,
Mhm.
and it was made for Corona, but he took like a few of them out. So it was like 3 Corona and then 3 of Angry Orchard apple cider.
Oh
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had that for my birthday, and that was that. And
What
then I became it,
happened?
and then I mean, as I drank it, I could feel my feet kind of burning. Like I was, no, I'm just kidding.
As you're loaded with
Hellfire.
fires of hell.
I was thinking through the floor. There was things coming up and grabbing my calves.
I've had some people kind of wonder if I ever had like an alcohol problem. I never did. I mean, I definitely have like, there have been moments where it's like, okay, probably like I feel like I want to get drunk, but then I do, and I don't feel as good as maybe I think I should. And then I just kind of, oh, okay. It's never been like some like, the forbidden sin where I partake and all of a sudden it runs my life. I could drink myself like crazy drunk, and it wouldn't really be an addicting experience. It'd be an experience that I definitely could like tell a story and have like some sort of maybe enjoyment to a degree, but overall it wouldn't be something like, oh, I want to do this every day or every other day or once a week. It's like, yeah, once in a while.
Mm. And sometimes that once in a while is every 4 hours. It's been a while. It's only noon.
But yeah, that's the thing is like, I mean, if you have like everyone should be free to kind of like partake in a way that they feel they're comfortable with. I mean, if someone has a problem, then they have a problem. But if someone just drinks and has no problem whatsoever, like I'll ask you guys about this. So in regards to like drugs or just substances in general, have you guys heard of the whole thing with like certain pastors who will try to like, instead of saying you can't, they'll kind of say, well, you shouldn't because what if someone else has a problem and you drink in their presence?
Yeah.
Like they kind of use that as a justification to say, just don't anyways.
Well, That's their problem, I guess.
Like, here's why we don't serve beers at a church picnic.
Yeah.
Because there are other people there that could be alcoholics that have a problem. So we shouldn't do that. And it's like, okay, I could see that to a point.
Yeah. But I mean, they also serve coffee with cream and sugar and donuts, which are 4 different drugs. So
I mean, you can't possibly live your life based on the expectations of everybody's addiction out there. Some people are addicted to shopping. Some people are addicted to sex. Some people are addicted to junk food. If I were to live my life as a supposed warning sign to every addiction of every person,
avoid any appearance of sinful behavior or whatever it is.
Yeah. I would basically be able to do nothing, right? My entire life would be dry and boring, and I'd probably wish and pray for death. That's not. I don't think that's a reasonable position, right?
Right.
Now, okay. So let me just give my take on the alcohol thing. I've written an entire series on this because when I was involved with the church, a non-believing friend of mine invited me out to a local pub in Trinidad for her 30th birthday party. She's not a Christian, went to the pub, there's music and everybody's there and whatever. And I had a Guinness, right? And anybody wants to know more about God and alcohol, look into the story of Arthur Guinness. He invented Guinness as a way to honor God, right? So it's a fascinating story. But while I was at this gathering, 2 young girls from the church that I was involved in were also there, and they saw me there drinking a Guinness and basically tattletale back to the pastor. Oh my God, we saw Brooke drinking a Guinness. And, he came down on me quite publicly on Facebook. Never mind, they was still there. He didn't go down on them. He went down on me. And at the end of the day, he's like, I said, yeah, I went there. I had a couple drinks. I loved on my friend who was, having her birthday party. What's the big deal? And he's like, oh, well, why did you only have a couple drinks? You could have had the whole case. And, just completely blowing it out of proportion. And I basically shut him up by saying, well, so basically you're accusing me of being a wine bibber and a friend of sinners. I'm in good company, right? Because
that's exactly what they accused Jesus of. Yeah.
That's what they accused Jesus of, right? And I basically couldn't come back from that. So I do not think that the Bible forbids the use of alcohol. Matthew 15:11 says it is not what goes into a man that defiles him, it is what comes out. If my friend Terrence was here, who's a fan of the show, he would talk about his experience reading that passage and finding a cigarette lodged in the Bible at that very moment, which he pulled out and smoked, which he swears came from the Lord. It wasn't there before, it just kind of appeared. So anyway, we'll use that going forward.
Wow.
Yeah. And I did want to say something interesting real quick on topic that actually, the talking about the whole, don't ever drink because it might cause someone to stumble. There are also times, and John Piper talks about this, which is crazy because, he's like the Calvinist TradCon savior, right? And so I like a couple things John Piper says, not everything, but he does have a really interesting part on drinking where he says the exact opposite of what most people say, which is I never drink unless I'm socially supposed to, instead of the opposite of what most people say, which is, I'll drink unless I'm near somebody that might cause them to stumble. There are times where not drinking will cause someone to stumble, right? Sure. And he used to give examples of when he would do ministry tours and he'd be in Germany and, he goes and eats dinner at the hosting pastor's house and they just pour him a beer. It's worse to not drink than it is to drink in that circumstance. And he goes over that. And a lot of people don't think that far. And I think that's part of the problem with the Bible Belt idea in general is you think the whole world is the Bible Belt, right? And if we're supposed to go out and witness and go out and be like Christ everywhere, that means you also have to adapt to some of the smaller cultural norms, which could include drinking and drugs, right?
Correct. Yeah. So just to cap off my story with that whole thing the idea that, you must abstain from all alcohol. And my mother was and is an alcoholic. So there was a time in my life where I was more pious and whatever, and I thought I was holier than thou, and I didn't drink any alcohol. Right. And I believe actually, I was a real party kid. I was drinking some heavy, heavy stuff. Trinidad, we have something called puncheon, which is no less than 75% proof. I mean, it's like paint thinner, right? You could blow fireballs and stuff with that.
European moonshine.
Yeah. It's Caribbean moonshine. So I was a heavy, heavy drink. And then I went through this pious stage where I didn't drink at all. And I actually thought I was kind of super holy and whatever. And then I just kind of snapped out of it. And there is a time, like if you have a problem, God might tell you specific, hey, don't drink, right? Which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But self-control is a fruit of the spirit, right? The Bible doesn't condemn drinking; it condemns drunkenness, right? Going into excess. But in the Psalms, for instance, it says that wine is a comfort to those who are suffering. It makes a man jolly. All of these things are a gift of God. I mean, when we get into the harder stuff and you hear about how they used to spike the wine in the Old Testament with some pretty heinous concoctions, this was all biblical. This was kind of all the biblical stuff. So yeah, I believe fully we can enjoy an alcoholic beverage responsibly. Drunkenness is another story. And to the point you were making about whether you do this for a person who's stumbling. My ex-girlfriend was an alcoholic. And, I was like, I made it very clear. I'm not changing my lifestyle for you. I'm not going to take your problem and put it on my shoulders. Mm-hmm. And that's always been my attitude with this thing. I think you could enjoy it responsibly. Self-control is a fruit of the spirit. The Holy Spirit will tell you, hey, you've had enough. That's it. And I say, trust the spirit in you. You'll be all right.
Mm-hmm.
And then the spirit tells you, all right, drink more. Shots. So
yeah, actually, I think that was a very big song last year in Trinidad called Shots.
Yeah. So I think we went over well pretty about the drugs part, right? At least we all agree it's pretty much substances in general that affect your body and mind that wouldn't happen on your day-to-day life, right? Is essentially, I guess, the way to boil it down.
Unless let's get partaking day-to-day.
Possibly. Which is a weird thing in itself, because then you become acclimated to it, and actually you could feel worse not doing it, right?
Yeah.
And that's its own thing, and that's part of my whole 9-to-5 job is dealing with addiction and stuff like that, and we can get to that in a minute. But like the religion aspect, and so we talked a lot about shitting on tradcons and people who say no, all drugs are bad, even though they're still doing drugs, even though it might not be from a dealer in a trench coat, right? We're all still doing drugs to some extent. So I want to see how the religion part plays into that, right? And not just Christianity, just really any religion in general. What is from your research, what is your guys' history of finding that relationship between various religions and drugs? Because not all of them hate it.
Burning bush.
Oh yeah, that's a very common theory, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of theories on if Moses had basically encountered a literal burning bush that was it was like some sort of plant that would have given him a full-blown hallucination. There's also and a lot of people tend to attribute religious experiences, spiritual experiences to some sort of drug, or through a combination of possibly even mental exercises plus minor drugs. So if I drink and I get drunk, but I'm also into a contemplative sort of spiritual mindset, it's not that alcohol would cause me to hallucinate or get a revelation, but I would be more open to maybe certain parts of the brain that would be more relaxed. You relax inhibitions to allow those parts of you to kind of come out more. It's kind of a similar thing with marijuana. You smoke and people get crazy ideas or whatever. It's the same thing maybe in the religious context where you smoke some weed and all of a sudden you're like, wait, what if Jesus was whatever? What if, or someone could get very creative and start drawing some religious art? Wouldn't it be cool if you saw some sort of religious artwork and that you find out that person drew that while partaking hallucinogens or something?
Mm-hmm.
And it would have the brilliance of those paintings you see in those 300, 400, 500-year-old churches in Europe. And a Christian would see that and go, man, you're so talented. How did you come up with that? Drugs? How would they argue with that? How that you're partaking in substances that they have something against to draw things that they would have absolutely something that they would actually improve their own spiritual experiences.
Yeah. I think it's a tricky subject, I think, when you talk about is drugs enhancing your spirituality or not? Because I've seen both sides of the fence and I'm still sitting on it, right? Sitting on said fence. Because I think there are some verses that point towards don't do that, but there are also the vast amount of history that was normal. So it's I don't know how to really take it either way. So I kind of just let that be a personal choice. But to me, it is unusual, at least. I think the main verse, I think it's in First Peter. It talks about don't use the wildlife like other people do for your spirituality. And that could include drugs. I think it mostly talks about debauchery and orgies and drunkenness specifically, but also who is First Peter talking to? You know, you can get into the context of that and all that. But I mean, I've kind of seen arguments for both sides. Is drugs supposed to enhance spirituality or not? And I don't know if you guys want to, Brooke, you want to do your take on that, but I don't know. I've seen both sides, and I think both have a point.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get into the hypothetical. Like John Alghero wrote The Mushroom and the Cross, basically kind of surmising that, you know, the birth of Christianity was surrounded around mushrooms and a secret mushroom cult. And very much like the proposition that Amos was talking about, the Jewish scholars are looking back at the possibility of the burning bush. There really isn't any burning bush that could kind of do that. So simply because, you know, most of that would destroy the psychedelics. I mean, it could have been a giant marijuana plant, supposedly. But there's not a lot of evidence to support that. However, they did find in testing some of the vessels in like early church and stuff like that, they found all sorts of substances in the incense burning, which included cannabis. As I said, the spiced wine include things cannabis, opioids, hembe, nightshade, you know, other different types of things. Then you look at things like the Eleusis in ancient Greece, where people like Plato and Marcus Aurelius came to the ceremony where they would actually partake of this substance and they would meet the goddess. I can't remember what her name was, but they invited the whole world, like, hey, come and partake and enjoy these things. You look at the Vikings, the berserkers, they were high up on mushrooms. It was part of their religious services. Yes, it did eventually evolve into like pagan orgies, including animal sex and some pretty crazy stuff. But I mean, these substances have been a part of the human existence for thousands of years. You could trace this all the way back to the Aztecs and the Egyptians and otherwise. But they were always taken with a sense of reverence, right? It was not something that you pop and then you go to a concert like, you know, we had during the 60s and the 70s. There is a strain of people who are trying to suggest that Christianity was kind of spawned out of that. There isn't a lot of evidence. It's a lot of misused wordplay and disassociated, you know, Sumerian words, trying to link it with Aramaic words, which is that's no way to do a historical study. Although they have introduced psychedelics into the church services. So the Marshall Chapel experiment back in 1965, I think that was put out by who? I think Boston University. They took like 25 participants of divinity, they hyped them up on psychedelics, and they did a church service. And, you know, of course, they had absolutely crazy experiences. And they checked on these people like 25 years later, and the psychedelics, they still point to that time as being one of the most impactful experiences of their life. So, I mean, I think there is a place for these things, especially when you look at the history of cannabis, for instance. The human body has an endocannabinoid system. So just like you have the nervous system, which is how your signals send from the brain to the different parts, you have this completely biological chemical system in your body called the endocannabinoid system. And it responds to cannabinoids, many of which we produce naturally, but it also responds to endogenous cannabinoids as found in cannabis and hemp. So the big thrust right now with the CBD oil is a direct response to kind of tapping into that cannabinoid system. They pull out the THC, but they give you all the thousands of other cannabinoids that interact with your body. And all it does is it triggers the body to create homeostasis. So if there's something out of balance and you take the cannabinoids, the body will like adjust the hormones, adjust this, adjust the other. And again, to bring up my good friend Terrence, when he discovered that, and I think it was my fault that he discovered it because I was the one who told him.
Shame.
He started smoking marijuana again. He was a very big smoker as a teenager. He started smoking, and he lost a ton of weight. Like the man slimmed down to a stick figure, like, Slender Man, right? No change other than the introduction of cannabis. And I know a number of people who that has been the case. So it's not clear cut. And in terms of spirituality, like I'm one of those people, I do enjoy psychedelics. The first psychedelic trip that I had, apart from my trip to Amsterdam, was in an attempt to communicate with God better. And there is a stream of meditation and other things. You see it in the Buddhist and the Hindu sects. Psychedelics especially trigger the exact same parts of the brain that you have in very deep meditation. It doesn't take thousands of hours of training to get there. And we were talking about like the default mode network of the brain that shuts down. Mm-hmm. That same effect happens in deep meditation, but the psychedelics allow you to experience it without really any effort, right? So it's kind of like effortless spirituality. Yeah. So yeah, I think there is a trend of Christian meditation that encourages that contemplation, stepping into the silence. You see that in some of the great saints, some of the desert fathers. Now we have these substances that can kind of aid in that. And we also know there's a lot of mental benefits that come from that. And it's a shame, the church is okay with coffee now. Some churches are okay with caffeine, alcohol. There is a church of cannabis. I'm not going to get into that whole thing. Mm-hmm. I think this is a natural progression because this is part of our ancestral history. And I think that spiritual side of humanity has been so repressed in society. We need a reemergence of some of these substances to really deal with, the fallout in humanity.
Yeah. And it's also funny how much, so that whole default mode network, that's one of the main things we talk about when I do my groups for felons that are in the drug court program. Default mode network comes up pretty much every session because it's so based in addiction, because having your default mode network activated is actually one of the main anxieties that cause you to want to use in the first place.
Correct.
So if you're actually trying not to use, you actually have to go out of your way to get into that, to shutting it off through breathing, through some other coping skills and stuff that help you focus and take it off. So it's kind of interesting that drugs kind of play a factor on both sides of that, right? Where you'll actually, like, if you're in the full-blown addiction and it's ruining your life, that's usually because you're letting your default mode network run wild and you're using addictive drugs to get rid of it. But then you can also use them to get rid of it healthily. Does that make sense? It's very interesting on that drugs can be either a healthy or unhealthy coping mechanism depending on how you use it and why. And that's a sentence I'm not allowed to say in my job because it sounds like I'm promoting drugs. But so yeah, we go through a lot of the breathing exercises and mindfulness meditation and all of that kind of stuff. And I think it's very interesting that the government regulates the drugs, but they do not regulate breathing exercises and how long you're allowed to sit still for a while, right? But they're mostly doing the same effect, just through different paths. Excuse me. What about you, Amos? What about you? And have you studied any other religions or different sects of Christianity? And
I just wanted to make a quick comment that about Brooke mentioning was it the cannabis church?
Yeah.
You think other Christians would ever try to weed them out? All right. So
and he's gone. Amos, thank you for that dad joke.
The Santo Daimao in Brazil, they use ayahuasca instead of communion. I mean, and they're like a Christian church.
Yeah.
When it comes to other, I mean, I know. Well, if you want to really get into like the origin of all religions, you could even kind of go the Rogan route, talking about the stoned ape theory.
That's how we got consciousness in the first place, kind of thing.
Yeah, basically, like the expansion of the brain could have been because we were, as apes, were just eating a bunch of hallucinogenic mushrooms.
I mean, it's a theory that's kind of been debunked because there's no way for that to really get into the DNA. You know, that kind of experience, it doesn't affect
yeah, it's epigenetics on a ridiculously large scale.
Yeah, it would be a fucking miracle for that to like that would be an act of
maybe
God.
that was God.
Ironically, I think the more common theory is actually our brains grew over time from eating more animals. Because apes in the wild, they mostly eat like bugs and small stuff and occasionally cannibalism, but they have a mostly fruit and vegetable diet with occasional meat through bugs or cannibalism or things like that. And I think the more common theory is because your brain runs on animal saturated fat, right? And so if we were a sect of apes that ate way more meat than everyone else, then it would make a lot more sense.
I mean, Neanderthals actually had a bigger brain than we have now. So they were like really into it until the advent of agriculture about 5,000-6,000 years ago. We actually have a smaller brain than our Neanderthal ancestors because we switched to plants again.
Right. So when it comes to other religions, you're talking like like their relationship with drugs.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about weed church. We talked about ayahuasca. Brooke talked a bit about like pagan and Norse mythology and Vikings. Drugs were a big part of it, and drinking were a big part of that culture, right?
I mean, could you say incense would have a certain type of effect on the body?
Kind of. I think it's more in that essential oil route.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I guess the Buddhists and Karens have something in common. But
I mean, the Native
we
Americans
get into like the more like small time religions of the a lot of the Native Americans, and they're partaking of peyote.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
How they would, and then that entire basically religious idea of like spirit guides, spirit animals, the journeys they would take. Now I'm not entirely familiar with kind of the Aboriginals of Australia, because they kind of go on like walkabouts, which are spiritual experiences themselves, if they partook of anything, because I don't know what would be in Australia, native to Australia, that they could partake in to like enhance that. If anyone knows, I don't know.
I think they have something. I mean, there's psychedelics all over the world, so I'm sure they have their own type. Yeah, I'm not sure what the Maori and the others would use.
I'll have to ask my Australian friends, but yeah, like even among the these more Aboriginal or Native groups, they'll partake in some local thing, and their entire religion would be formed around that. Because where do animal guides really come from? Well, you smoke enough peyote, you spend time in nature, all those animals sort of become integral to how you sort of define the universe around you. I don't know if Greek mythology would really play into something like that, but a lot of religions tend to attribute natural phenomena to gods, and it's almost like whether it's spirit guides or gods, there's like a polytheistic view to it. But whereas the monotheistic religions, drugs, like, would you guys agree that like the monotheistic religions of the world don't have as much mainstream drug use to like their theology?
I think they I mean, I think they just pick and choose.
Yeah.
They usually be lesser
mainstream.
heavy
Like
stuff.
there's sects within it that will partake, but like mainstream use of like hard, like, or just hallucinogens and such.
Maybe not necessarily hallucinogens, but I mean like what's that? Hookah is a huge thing for Middle Eastern cultures in general, specifically Islam. That's kind of their go-to thing.
Getting like high off of hookah though?
You can put whatever you want in a hookah. Yeah.
You can.
But I mean, the most common uses of hookah, are you going to like hallucinate?
Like, I mean, there was like Caterpillar and Alice in Wonderland that was always stripping balls off hookah. So, I mean, it's definitely possible. I know tobacco is like the normal one for today, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't always that, right? Hookah's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. So, yeah. I wanted to bring up something that might mess with people in a good way. Is talking about the original tithing in Old Testament Judaism. Tithing, how we see it today is, give 10% of your paycheck to the church every week or whatever. But old tithing was you would either bring stuff directly to the priests so they could use it, or if they were too far away, you would sell a chunk of your produce and your ox and your cattle and stuff, and you'd use that to go have a party. So you either bring party supplies to the Levites, or if they're too far away, you would just have your own mini party in honor of them. And in Deuteronomy 14, there's specifically a verse that says, you turn it into money and bind up the money in your hand. You go to the place the Lord your God chooses and spend that money for whatever you desire, oxen or sheep or wine or strong drink or whatever your appetite craves, right? So that's in Deuteronomy 14. But where it says other strong drink, the actual word in Hebrew there is intoxicants. And so apparently part of tithing was going and buying booze and other extreme forms of drugs and go have a party for a while. That was the original tithe of the Old Testament.
It'd be funny to bring up to church. Hey, so I'm taking my tithe and I'm going to go buy an ounce of weed.
That would be more biblical than what we do now. Yeah.
All right. And I mean, and to touch on that, the wines, as I say, were spiced with some pretty heavy opiates and other shit, right? Like normal fermentation, you might get 14% alcohol, but through the testing and stuff like that, what they've done with all of these spice wines, it got it to like 20, 30, sometimes 35%. And again, there was cannabis in it, there was opium, there was nightshades, henbane, all these things. And these are hallucinogens. So when you read about in the Songs of Solomon, where, she spices her wine for her lover and, she's decking out, to have this great sexual experience, it's fucking drugs. She's like getting him high.
So not only is Song of Solomon about sex, it's about like sex while high.
Like high drug sex. Exactly.
Wow. Real biblical stuff, guys. Imagine like
it's a reason that the sages wanted to pull the Song of Solomon out of the canon.
who is the woman in it, or was it just describing like a woman in general?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of women.
There's a lot of women.
There's a couple times where it's plural.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So it's an orgy of
but it's an approved orgy because it's mostly concubines. So therefore,
and welcome to my 10-part series of the Song of Solomon.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure to bring all of your, your favorite alcohol and drugs and partners. No.
Yeah, there actually is a guy, and I brought him up to you guys a while ago, but there's a guy named Levi Shea who's kind of in the manosphere area, and he does some deep dives. He had the Red Pill Bible Guy name. Do you remember that from a while ago? And now he's just going by his normal name, Levi Shea, but he's doing in-depth studies and has a newsletter of everything he finds in Song of Solomon every week. And he'll start researching what alcohol they drank, what drugs they used, what all the euphemisms mean. Because sometimes they just openly talk about sex, but a lot of times it's like vague, poetic innuendos for more sex, right?
Yeah.
And so he like deep dives into all those and all the drugs they use and stuff during it. It's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, tell me about those pomegranates.
These young deer fertility, bro.
Yeah,
it is some very spicy stuff. And we have to remember the war on drugs as we have it today, and the outlawing of cannabis, psilocybin, all these. It's a very recent thing in human history. Not that long ago, Coca-Cola actually had cocaine in it, right? You can buy heroin as a painkiller in the pharmacy, right? Even to this day, meth is basically bath salts being sold at, Bed Bath and Beyond, all right? These substances have been interacting with humanity for thousands of years. So our local Puritan stigma of, these outlawed substances is more so from government propaganda than, its actual use. Like all the stuff around LSD, you're going to stare at the sun and it'll burn out your eyes, and, people are going to like walk off of the bridge and all. None of that's happened. Like none of it. Similarly, the amount of people who've died from cannabis is zero, right? The only way you die from cannabis is if, a CIA plane is flying overhead and it drops a kilo on your head, from 25,000 feet, right? That's the only way you're going to die from cannabis. Mm-hmm. But yeah, these substances are not the same thing as probably the more crack cocaine or heroin or any of these other different types of things that you're injecting. Even those have medical usage, like Oxycontin, which is a painkiller, is basically refined cocaine. All of these things are fine in the medical sense, which I think like in America right now, you'll have the opioid crisis where people are buying legal drugs through prescription, right? This is what's going on.
The opioid crisis is kind of overblown because what it's turned into is taking away the need for painkillers to the people who actually need it. So what happens is the entire medical community is coming down on people who prescribe opiates to their patients. And what happens is it's like, hey, I've got some cancer, I've got some, really nasty diseases going on, and I'm in excruciating pain. I need pain management. And they're like, well, I can't prescribe you anything.
Yeah.
Because if I do, there's an inquiry and I get, my license removed. So the war on drugs has turned into just a war on giving. And so what happens is you have these people with excruciating pain, no substantial pain management method, that go out on the streets and get heroin, and every now and then one of them gets one laced with just enough fentanyl to kill them.
Yeah.
But hey, keeping everyone safe.
I mean, this is the ironic thing about the war on drugs. So the US and the UK, Europe in general, this is everywhere except Portugal. Portugal and a couple Uruguay, they've kind of given up on the war on drugs. But you're exactly right. So the drugs just went into the pharmaceutical industry and they're, prescribing it for pain management. So what do you end up? You end up with this massive, opioid crisis. So what does the government do to fix that? Is they crack down on the medication, right? So if you prescribe too much of it, you're now kind of going into pushing a dealership kind of drug dealer territory.
Instead of helping people.
It's not helping anybody who's in pain, right?
Right.
I mean, even out here in the UK, there's been a push to legalize medical cannabis, and they're dragging their feet. So the NHS out here allows medical cannabis, but they haven't actually issued any prescriptions, right? Because the drug companies want that market for themselves.
Right.
So there's this unholy alliance between the government and the corporations to kind of keep it off the market. But like we say, if we had cannabis, it actually integrates with our body very, very well. And you can deal with pain and trauma and all these things with that.
Real quick to Heather. Yeah, the opioid crisis. So there was a crisis, but it's been overcorrected. So anyone that knows anything about driving in the snow understands that if you're fishtailing, what do you not do? You don't overcorrect. Well, imagine now our war on drugs is just one giant fishtail that the government keeps overcorrecting all over the place, saying it's actually helping. Because either drugs help people and we let them have it, but some are going to abuse it, or we crack down on it so that abuse is actually worse, but the people who need it don't get any of it. And in the same way, the same thing goes for, your opioids. Like there was a crisis, there were people addicted to it, but there were also people that needed it to deal with it. I think it was since 2013, they basically started cracking down on doctors that anyone who was starting to prescribe certain painkillers to their patients would get looked in on. And if they were beyond a certain level of prescriptions, they could suspend or just completely remove their license to practice. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, like I said, people go out and start finding heroin, and heroin gets a little fentanyl, and then you're dead. You're hurting people. So we should be, allowing people to partake, but also have more resources and change our mindset towards abuse. Mm-hmm. Making abuse a medical problem, not some sort of social problem to just be engineered to hurt.
Not a criminal problem.
Right. Take it away, and then now you're hurting a whole bunch more people. So,
Yeah, I mean, a common question I always ask people all the time is if heroin are you not doing heroin because it's illegal, or are you not doing heroin because you know what it does, right?
Exactly.
Is the only thing stopping you from
I'm not
being
doing
a
it because
meth
I
head
can't
and cooking
afford
your
it.
own meth the government, or do you know how horrible of an idea that is, right?
Correct.
You know, same kind of thing.
It's a money problem. No,
Meth's cheap, man.
I'm not
You
doing
got a
it. I
2 liter bottle.
can't buy it.
Yeah. I think something interesting to bring up though is like we talked about it a little at the beginning, but maybe we can go more into it. Is about the idea of the dose makes the poison, right? There's a lot of drugs when used in small quantities or in the natural resources, like before we were able to artificially, like extract it and reproduce it and things like that. That really had no big issues on you, right? I think a lot of times we think about like drinking coffee or smoking weed as the small drugs is because they're pretty low doses, right? How much caffeine do you really need to f yourself up?
Oh,
You know what I mean? Like it's like 40 to 60 cups to like really
there's a
hurt.
website that basically you can enter in a drink and your weight, like so it's like your sex, your weight, and what you're drinking, and you literally just click kill me. It'll tell you how much, like it was straight up. It will tell you, I think, like how many cans of Mountain Dew to drink to kill yourself. And it was like
aspirin as well. If there's a certain amount of toxicity, if you have too much Tylenol, that'll kill you.
It'll shut up your liver or something like
water
that.
can kill you guys. Don't drink that.
Yeah, somebody died on radio drinking too much water in a row.
Yeah, they're with kidneys flooded.
But I mean, talking about the dose makes the poison though. Like the coca plant that cocaine comes from, for like 1,000 years, all of the natives would just chew that regularly as their version of coffee. Yeah. And like, so you could literally just take the leaves and chew it and just get a very mild buzz. But the fact that we have the ability to extract it and make really condensed versions, like I think I looked up, but I think it's like if cocaine is 100% pure of the cocaine extract, if you chew the leaf, you get about 0.7% of it. Yeah. And that's what grows in the wild. And you can just chew it and get a slight buzz like you drink coffee. And that's what they did all the time. And it screwed up their teeth over time. So thankfully, if you do that and brush your teeth, you'll actually be doing fine, probably better than you are now, right? And so it's very interesting how that works. And another common thing to talk about that is Dramamine. Do you know Dramamine, it's originally used to like soothe your stomach from motion sickness or nausea. But if you eat a whole box, you trip balls. Right? Yeah. And so actually that nausea medication is a microdose of hallucinogen.
And if anyone remembers Wolf of Wall Street, the Quaaludes.
Oh yeah, those were big a couple generations.
They were just like he said it was just they were invented by doctors to help pregnant women sleep or something.
Yeah.
But then if you push past the sleep part of it, you would trip balls.
Yeah. But I mean, it's important to know like the cocaine is actually legal in certain parts of South America, right? If because of the altitude, some of these places are so high up. In order to keep from blacking out, they would sell cocaine, and it'll keep you awake, which is one of the side effects of cocaine.
Cocaine combating altitude sickness.
Yeah. In fact, it was featured on Top Gear. If you watch the South American trip, Hammond actually buys some and he chews it up, and he's there talking in the car really fast. But yes, it's perfectly legal in parts of South America. And just interesting note, Colombia is at all-time high production of cocaine to this day, right? They're at the same levels they were back in the 80s. So the war on drugs hasn't done fuck all, right? But the violence has come down because basically the cartels are no longer fighting, and there are other reasons why it's not as violent, and they're promoting tourism and other things. But you're exactly right. These are natural substances that have been in the plants for years, and we've been getting the benefits from some of them. Mm-hmm. As I say, sometimes there is a benefit to it. Sometimes too much of it is dangerous. So on the issue of dosing, for instance, yeah, you could have a cup of coffee. Back in the 80s, they used to have Jolt Cola, which was the equivalent of 3 cups of coffee. Like the hacker community knew about that. Now you got Red Bull, you got Bang, you got Monster, which are these high caffeine drinks. Mm-hmm. It's in that respect, it's about the dosing. on the psychedelic side, there are people who microdose psychedelics, especially in Silicon Valley and the creative side. Small amounts of LSD, small amounts of magic mushrooms, not enough to get a hallucinogenic effect, but the reaction on the brain can help you be creative. It can help you think outside the box. The guy who got me into it was a trader. He was working in the city of London, and he said the microdosing helped him see patterns in the market to try and make more money, right? So it helped him with his pattern recognition and these other things. So I think, yeah, in small doses, I don't think there's any major problem. Like we said, that nobody's died from cannabis. You would need an obscene amount of psychedelics to cause any harm. There's been no deaths from any kind of psychedelics. Can't say the same thing for heroin, cocaine, and opium, and a couple of these other ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, in small doses, they're good for pain relief and other things. So I think the dosing has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with that whole thing of extraction and like compounding the strength of it, right? And like if we had caffeine that was, extracted like we do cocaine or opiates, then you could die pretty easily from overdoses.
Well, we do have caffeine pills.
Yeah, and I'm sure you could take a huge amount of those. But I mean, even those aren't to the degree of strength that it is the cocoa plant versus cocaine, right?
Yeah. But everything we have, we can get some sort of concentrated form. Yeah, Boros, we were just talking about the cocoa leaves a little bit ago. But yeah, extracting stuff is kind of what we do best. Like you were saying, that there's caffeine pills, but there's also there's dabs for cannabis.
Yeah,
it's just concentrated CBD not CBD, THC. And I haven't even heard of anyone like people just like take that to get extra high, but I've never heard of anyone dab too much. Like if you were somehow able to inhale so much of the dabs that you could, because technically there is a dose level that you can die of with THC, but it's so ridiculously high and you have to ingest it all in one
400 brownies.
No, it's not. I don't think it's even that. I think it's actually more than that. Like the concentration of it is so ridiculous that and how quickly you would have to ingest it.
Yeah,
it's kind of like that whole thing with the we talked about with the caffeine thing. Like 70 cans of Mountain Dew will kill me. Yeah, if I managed to drink 70 cans of Mountain Dew in 5 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to. Oh,
hello.
We got a bit of an echo there, Tom.
Hello?
You got headphones?
Yeah, we have an echo from your thing.
I don't know. Let me come out and come back.
All right.
Oh, that's not gonna.
Yeah, he's got to turn down the volume on his thing. So, I mean, I think the question is, do you think these things are permissible within the Christian frame?
I think they're permissible, but I mean, what is it? All things are lawful, but not all things are beneficial.
Correct.
I think that's pretty much a universal thing. Hold on, let's see. Is it fixed?
Hello.
Hello.
Yep. All right, it works.
That's better.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Good.
Hello, guys. I have a very important announcement to make.
Big news.
All right. Conk, Brooke, Amos, I am announcing, you heard it here first, folks. I'm running for president in 2028. My platform is going to be SpongeBob SquarePants. My platform is SpongeBob SquarePants. Patrick Starr, Squidward, Sandy, Mr. Krabs, free Krabby Patties for everyone. And we're stopping plankton in 2028. Let's go.
I'll never get that formula. Not on my watch.
That's right. What's up, guys?
Hey. We also have Heather here. So do you have a specific thing? Oh, look at that.
Oh, he's having a beer.
Partaking. Oh no.
You're going to hell.
Yeah, I'm just announcing y'all going to hell. Love ya. Going to hell. That's it. I'm running for president. I got my Yingling. This is great. You guys need to watch this show every week, or you're going to hell.
This is the Bible. We'll quote it later, But yeah.
Awesome, bro.
All right. Have a good one, Tom.
See you guys later.
For the announcement.
Take care, man.
We got Heather here.
Heather, what's up, man?
How you guys doing?
Doing well.
I apologize, but my dog is here and I'm scratching his head at the same time. So I'm sorry for the shaky camera, but otherwise he's going to start slamming his giant Kong treat toy around and you won't be able to hear anything but that.
Oh, I know the struggle. Yeah.
He's a 100-pound Doberman Pinscher.
Oh yeah.
Who thinks he's a lap dog. Anyway, in our old neighborhood, there was, the place across the street was used as a crack. And we had like a lot of things going on. We tried to improve the neighborhood, actually, doing a number of things in that area. And it was just such an uphill battle. And I saw so many people in their active addiction and just, it was very sad and very frightening, actually, because you would. So, you'd see somebody stumbling towards you as you're walking down the street and you didn't know what would happen. I saw people walking into traffic and everything. So, I think what you're referring to, though, is more of a controlled environment and using some sort of substance in a controlled environment if you are not addicted or have like problems with alcohol or drugs. If you have those things, if you have those problems, I don't even think in a controlled environment it's a good idea because you to want to use it, but out of that controlled environment.
Yeah, I think how I would put it is like, know yourself, right?
Correct.
Not everyone has the same temptations as everyone else, kind of thing. So if you have an addictive personality and you know that, probably don't try meth, right? But there are people who actually can use meth without getting addicted. I know somebody who buys it off the street and sprinkles some into their coffee just to make it stronger, but they don't, full bore, use it and then go live in the streets eventually, right? Or pull their teeth out, or fix their lawnmower 4 times in an hour, right?
Exactly.
Which are all common symptoms. But so it's really about it's not necessarily controlling your environment; it's controlling yourself, right? At the end of the day,
Sure.
Because for the examples we talked before, there are times and places we're not doing drugs, like the example John Piper gave of if somebody poured him a beer in Germany, it would be bad if he didn't drink it, right? He would actually lose his witness there because he just offended a whole culture, right? I think she bowed out. I'll finish my point though, is like, yeah, addiction is bad. And it's all coming up to yourself. And it also comes up to know what you're doing, right?
Correct.
If you know you're chewing on a cocoa leaf versus doing cocaine, those are very different things, right? If you know alcohol is a problem for you, then don't do alcohol. Drink your coffee, find some other way to get to it, right? But I think our whole idea here is saying, like, don't be scared of the D word, drugs, because you're already doing them anyway in certain doses and certain types, right? Everyone is doing drugs at this point, whether it's ibuprofen or coffee or anything in between, right? Everyone's doing drugs. That's a normal part of life. It's just knowing yourself and knowing when you can do that, and don't be scared of the D word, right? If that makes sense. And I could do a whole nother hour and a half about addiction, because that's literally my job, talking about what that entails and why it's so dangerous and like how to get out of that and what leads people to it. I can do that for ages. But I wanted to talk more about it in the spirituality religion sense, right?
I would agree with you, Kong. And none of us here are advocating people go out and start buying drugs, right? Oh, well, apart from Amos, but he's a libertarian anarchist, so what do we expect? But I like what Heather said, and we kind of touched on that in the sense that, this is not the kind of thing that you pop a bunch of pills and you go off to a concert. These substances have always been respected in ancient times. They were part of a ceremony. There was a shaman or a spiritual guide. Even with the experiments that are done today in therapeutic psychedelic experiments, where they're using this to treat depression and other things, it's medical professionals. You take the magic mushrooms, you're in a controlled environment with a doctor and a supposed spirit guide, and it's all kept with a kind of reverence. This is not something, in fact, I think there was a substance in ancient Rome. I can't remember what it was called, or might have been ancient Greece, that was forbidden. Like there was a yearly ceremony where everybody partook of this hallucinogen. And one of the senators took it out of that ceremony and actually did it like socially at a party. And they basically wanted to stone him to death because it was taken out of the context of these things. So I think, yeah, you do have to be very wise and very careful about these things. But self-control is a fruit of the spirit. And I keep pointing back to that. Know yourself, trust the spirit in you. But we're not saying to go and, shoot up on heroin anytime soon. So
unless the Lord wills. No.
Unless the Lord wills.
Very few times will that happen.
And you'll meet God sooner. What? No.
Oh, yeah.
Don't do that.
I have to admit though, when I do take a good psychedelic trip, I do feel very connected to God. I'm not gonna deny that for a minute. But anyway,
it's really, either heaven comes to you, you go to heaven. It's
heaven is within me. So
it reminds me of my favorite meme of Joe Rogan. I think I've shared it to you guys before, where it's like a guy enters heaven and he's talking to Jesus, and out of nowhere, Joe Rogan's head pops out. And he goes, "Wow, this is crazy, man," and then leaves. It's on one of his DMT trips. He comes by all the time.
What's going on, Red?
Oh, it's going good here. So I kind of wanted to get into my thing, kind of the alcohol and the cultural association with Catholics, right?
Right.
So first, I want to get your guys' opinion and what you heard as non-Catholics. And I can kind of go and basically tell you a stereotype and not.
I think the Catholics have always been pretty liberal with alcohol. They've never had, just like the Orthodox, they've never had a Puritan streak when it came to alcohol, like some of the Protestants and the Methodists and these others. So it's kind of, just don't get drunk sort of thing. That's always been my impression of the Catholics.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear your opinion, because I think out of everybody on the panel, I'd say you're the furthest away from Catholicism in any meaning of the word, right?
In every sense of the word. One of my really good, lifelong friends, I've known him since I was in 8th or 9th grade, is named Nick, and him and his family and his wife and his wife's family are all Irish Catholic. And I did a lot of religious ceremonies with them, which involved birthday parties, St. Patrick's Day, and everything in between. And it always involved lots and lots of Irish beer.
See, what's funny about St. Patrick's Day is apparently historically it was a dry holiday.
Yes. Yeah.
We've turned it into a drinking holiday.
We've turned it into a drunken orgy. Yes.
How dare we?
I think we even had a drinking party after one of their kids got dedicated and baptized when they were 3. We did some special ceremony at a river with the pastor, and then we all just went to Nick's house and drank a lot. So
I was gonna say everyone got drunk when the kid graduated from kindergarten or something. Like every occasion, anything, literally
people are coming into town. It's going down, right?
Yeah.
Let me tell you how close to home that is, but not that bad.
Yeah.
Amos, what's your view on Catholics and alcohol? Have you?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I don't know. More power to them. The thing with my family was alcohol was actually quite absent almost. Even though so my family who came up predominantly Catholic, and then my part of the family who became Protestant, kind of your American evangelical types. It didn't quite turn into really any drinking. It wasn't until later on that parts of the family would kind of get into some wine, some beer, but nothing really that stronger than that. And then, of course, with me kind of being like because between my parents even, I think my mom maybe had wine every now and then, but it wasn't really seen as alcohol. And then then here comes me drinking. Then the rest of my siblings, as they came of age, would drink too. But that's the thing. Catholic family, almost no drinking for most of my life.
Right.
Which kind of throws it off. So I just assumed that. But then here I am, like, watching movies and stuff with my parents, and I'm noticing like priests and other Catholics are all getting drunk, and I was like, what? They can drink? But we don't? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too familiar with the entire like different like thing with Catholics and drinking, just because I was already part of like an already out of the ordinary family.
All right, so we've got all your guys' opinion. Now let me spin a yarn of my experience. So, yes, the stereotypes are real, and there are those kind of people. Let's just say that. What are some things that you've heard that right after church they go to the bar, right?
Right.
Now, this area is really bad because they're when that stereotype is being said, they're really thinking of the country Catholics like around here. So what you have is, it's not as much in this county, but the county above, where if you want to go for a night of drinking, all it is like flat country, and you look for the bar by looking for the church steeple.
Right.
Right.
Well, that's kind of the Midwest thing. Every small town has a post office, a church, and a bar.
And a pizza place.
No.
No.
Church and bars way more prevalent than pizza places.
Yes.
Fair enough. I'm pretty sure every town's got pizza place.
Because if you don't go to the bar to drink, you're like during lunch or whatever. If you're working in the area, you come there for lunch, right? Yeah. Because they serve food. So
okay, so they would have pizza. I think they have to serve certain types of food just to be considered a bar, but like the pizza they would have would be like frozen pizza from a gas station.
Yeah, fair enough. I was just being facetious. Don't worry, I wasn't making a major point.
But yeah, it was always the thing. Like you drive through town, you're like, okay, there's the post office, there's the church, and there's the bar. All right, oh, and a gas station. Yep, we're all good. We got it all covered. And it could be a town of like 100 people.
Yeah, and no, like I've got even worse. So get this, there's a town, and we always make a joke, it's called Egypt. And it's not even a town. There's like maybe 10 or 20 houses gathered around a church and a like communal center. And there's like one tractor dealership, and that's the town.
Wow.
Is there a bar?
Not even a bar. Not even a bar.
Wow.
How dare they?
That is out of the ordinary.
Yeah. That's how small town it is around here. But for the most part, if you see a church steeple, you're going to find a bar. You're going to find a place to drink. The locals may not be, too happy to see somebody from out of state, but
I mean, I'll add this to the town that I came from when I was in Essex was called Waltham Abbey. And of course there is an abbey. There's a massive Church of England churches, beautiful building. It's I think 500, 600 years old. But the other claim to fame to Waltham Abbey, at least about 20 years ago, it was the most packed place for pubs in the entire UK. Like that was the thing. It had more pubs per capita than any other place in the United Kingdom. Not so much now, a lot of them closed down and stuff like that. But in Europe especially, I love what you said, like, after you go to church, then they go to the pub. No. In Europe, you go to church in the pub, right? There are places that actually gather inside. I did this in Germany and other places. Apart from the formal religions, a lot of them actually gathered in the pubs. And alcohol, the church has a fantastic history with alcohol. The monks used to brew beer and wine. Some of the finest beverages used to come out of the church.
Yes.
I mean, the drunkenness coming out of Ireland that inspired Arthur Guinness to create Guinness, a lot of that was brewed by the church. But we've thrown all of that out, Puritanism and all this, but it's a lovely history.
Well, and let me, I guess, one up you for my area. There's literally an old church that went out because it lost funding. I think it was an old Presbyterian church, but this is a place I go to all the time, so I literally can say I go to church, right?
All the time.
Yeah, this place has been converted into a bar.
Wow.
Literally, like it's not like
Led
a
the
dive,
spirits.
not a dive bar either. Like nice, you're paying like $5 for a craft beer kind of deal.
Classy, yeah.
So, yeah, I go to church.
Yeah, I think there was like a bar and nightclub in Denver called Church, and that was a common joke there. There was also a bar in my old hometown called Family Therapy, which was great. So you just tell people, "Oh, I'm going to family therapy tonight. Sorry, I can't make it." They just go play pool and get wasted. But yeah, it's a very common thing. Good old play on words.
Yeah.
To hide substance use.
No, and I mean, yeah, I guess the whole drinking thing, there's a lot of cultural Catholics around here. And, even if they weren't going to church, they'd still be going to the bars. I mean, it's so integrated into the culture around here that, I mean, you do have your non-Catholics that still despise the Catholics because they see the stereotype up close, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, yeah, but
I mean, the cultural side to it in the U.S., the alcohol is an issue, right? So that if you're drinking in America, at least in the Bible Belt, you're going to hell. Europe, that's not the case, right? Europe, it's video games. If you're playing like video games or whatever, that's when you're going. Like in Germany, if you're Christian and you play violent video games, you're going to hell, right? But then you go to Asia, and it's neither of those things. As if you go to the cinema, right? Drinking is okay, alcohol is okay, but if you're in the watching the propaganda coming off from Hollywood, is no. And religion loves to pick on fun. Right, that's kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah.
So Asia is a big movie market. It's all these, so that's why they attack these things. None of it is real. These are just cultural norms. It's nobody's going to hell over any of these issues. As the Bible says, it's not what goes into a man that defiles him; it's what comes out.
Yeah, my brother actually was about to enroll in Moody Bible College. I think it's in the Chicago area, and they're hardcore on that. We're like, in order to be a student, you have to like sign waivers that you're not going to drink and you're not going to watch rated R movies. And if you watch a PG-13 movie, it has to be on the approved list. And these are freaking 21-year-olds. Like, you're going to mommy and daddy me about which PG-13 movies have too many cuss words? Okay.
All I can think of is the Christian Minecraft server meme.
Oh, yeah. The way it was meant to be. Oh, yeah.
That's crazy, man.
All right. Well, I think it's almost wrap up time, right? Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Red. Appreciate it.
Good to see you, bro.
All right. Final thoughts, Amos.
Do lots of drugs, drink lots of alcohol, have Song of Solomon levels of parties. And everything will be okay.
Amen.
Don't think we can add anything to that.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Took it all out of the room.
Yeah. If you are addicted, email me and we'll work it out. If you're not addicted, have fun.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of echo these guys' sentiments that there's a lot of propaganda. Do your own research on a lot of these things. A lot of these substances are not as dangerous as they make out. There are substances that are addictive and dangerous. I'm not saying those don't exist. But a lot of the benign stuff like marijuana and psychedelics and stuff like that, humanity has a long history of these things. And quite rightly, know yourself. Self-control is a fruit of a spirit. If you need help, definitely seek that out, contact Conquer, and he'll put you in touch with people in his network and these other types of things. But yes, some people do actually use these substances for spirituality. They use it for, dealing with drug addiction, depression, PTSD. The whole future of mental health seems to be surrounded in psychedelic research. I encourage people to look into those things. And I think these are health issues. I don't think there should be a war on drugs. I don't think drugs should be a criminal issue. I think these are health issues. I would love to see the war on drugs end, and that money and resource go towards healthcare and treating people who really have addiction. And if it was out in the open and regulated, you wouldn't have to worry about people spiking the opium with fentanyl or anything else. I think that's the solution. We're seeing that in Portugal, Uruguay, other places around the world that are decriminalizing and kind of giving up on this fight and treating it like a mental health issue. And I think that's the future of this issue.
Mm-hmm. Amen. So I'm doing it right. I'm ahead of the curve.
You're ahead of the curve. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for number 36. I always have to look down and check because I'm bad with remembering things. All right. Y'all have a good one.